Welcome to Bunny Trails, a whimsical adventure of idioms and other turns of phrase. I'm Dan Pugh.
And I'm Shauna Harrison. Each week, we take an idiom or other turn of phrase and try to tell the story from its entry into the English language to how it's used today. One time during the holidays, my family had many delicious food dishes, including amazing desserts. We were all gathered around making plates when my brother caught everyone's attention. He had taken a massive piece of pumpkin pie, and my dad said, "Well, it looks like you got the lion's share."
One time over the holidays, ate an entire pumpkin pie all by myself.
Yeah?
And then I got a tummy ache.
That's the downside of having the lion's share, you think?
I don't know, because there's a time in one's life where you could eat a whole pumpkin pie and not have any ill effects from it.
Oh,
But
yeah.
during that time frame, most of that time frame in life, there's people around you that tell you you're not allowed to do that, right?
Yeah.
And then after you become adult, there's a very narrow window where you have both the body capability to eat a whole pumpkin pie without getting an upset stomach, and also no one around to tell you you're not allowed to do it. Because you get to a certain point where it's like, right now, as a 45-year-old man, I can eat a whole pumpkin pie if I want to, but I will feel sick, so now my body can't do it. So there was a very narrow slice in late teens and early 20s, which is bigger for some people than others, but there's a very narrow slice where you can eat the lion's share of a pumpkin pie and not have the ill effects of it.
I see.
Yeah.
Maybe that's where the freshman 15 comes from.
That and many other facets that we are not going to talk about here.
Okay. Oxford English Dictionary tells us lion's share means, quote, the largest or principal portion, end quote. The concept of a lion's share has been around for a very long time. In fact, the lion's share is the title of one story from a collection of fables that has been credited to Aesop. He was a slave and a storyteller. It's believed that he lived between 620 and 560 BCE in ancient Greece.
And he wrote them in English.
Well, no.
Oh, okay.
Aesop's fables were printed in English for the first time around 1484 CE. The translation was done by William Caxton.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. He had introduced the printing press to the British just a little bit before that. So
Oh, interesting. Wow.
Maybe.
Okay, that's cool.
I love the Library of Congress's interactive Aesop fables. Their series is titled The Aesop for Children. Each story has a moving illustration, and it's well written but simplified to allow for younger learners to more easily understand them. It's also great for people who are learning English. Here is their version of the story. Quote, the lion's share. A long time ago, the lion, the fox, the jackal, and the wolf agreed to go hunting together, sharing with each other whatever they found. One day, the wolf ran down a stag and immediately called his comrades to divide the spoil. Without being asked, the lion placed himself at the head of the feast to do the carving and, with a great show of fairness, began to count the guests. 1, he said, counting on his claws, that is myself the lion. 2, that's the wolf. 3 is the jackal, and the fox makes 4. He then very carefully divided the stag into 4 equal parts. I am King Lion, he said, when he had finished, so of course I get the first part. This next part falls to me because I am the strongest, and this is mine because I am the bravest. He now began to glare at the others very savagely. If any of you have any claim to the part that is left, he growled, stretching his claws meaningly. Now is the time to speak. Might makes right, end quote.
That's a horrible lesson from that fable.
Yeah. It's
That
not
is what has led several countries in the last couple of years to invade other countries, is that they think might makes right. So this is a horrible lesson.
So yeah, the phrase though, the lion's share. So it may have originated from fables like this, right? So in the story, as you noted, the lion uses his power to take more than would be considered fair. And additionally, it focuses on the lion's use of strength and authority to override that fairness.
Yeah, it's fair. I think after this first time, though, I would not agree to go hunting with the lion ever again, though, if I had the option.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't either.
Yeah, so maybe that's the story, is choose your friends wisely.
Yeah. That should be the new,
the
that should be the
the
lesson.
new lesson of the fable. This is one of the things that I like about parables and fables is that you can tell the story, and over time as society's values and thoughts change, you can leave the same story there, but people will get different lessons from it, right? You can use this story as a general story, but then the society will place different values on different parts of the story as you go. So
Right.
hearing older stories like this, and it's actually some of Aesop's fables have been this way. You can track throughout history where societies felt, throughout time about what's the major lesson from this story, because it can change over time. Obviously, might makes right is clearly what he was going for, but as I jokingly said, but there's a little bit of truth to it, is that choosing your friends wisely is also a potential lesson that one can
Absolutely.
learn out of this.
Absolutely. And the thing here too is word choiceage. Really, word choice is a
You do a word history podcast. It's okay. You can make up words or use them in weird ways if you want, I guess.
word choiceage. Word choice is a factor. So the word right can have different meanings, right? So in this case, it could be saying that might gives you the right to something as opposed to
It being the correct way.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing there.
Yeah.
So we can't definitively track the origin of our phrase to this specific story, but the Aesop fables have a strong popularity throughout history, so it's likely to have influenced the familiarity and popularity of the terms the lion's share. Okay, so we're gonna move on from that, focusing back on to our phrase. The phrase is sometimes used in this way to express not only that someone has taken a large portion of the biggest portion, but that they have done so unjustly. When did the figurative sense of the lion's share become popular in printed works? This was closer to the late 1700s. The phrase was used in the piece Reflections on the Revolution in France by Edmund Burke. This was in a letter intended to have been sent to a gentleman in Paris. Quote, "Where the letting of their land was by rent, I could not discover that their agreements with their farmers were oppressive, nor when they were in partnership with the farmer, as often was the case, have I heard that they had taken the lion's share. The proportions seemed not inequitable." End quote. Essentially, Burke was saying that in the partnership, neither side acted selfishly or disproportionately to the detriment of the other. And compares this to how a lion might claim the majority in an unfair or forceful way. So he was using the lion's share as a contrast to the situation.
Yeah, I think it's also good to note that Burke was a big opponent of the revolution in France. So he was not talking about that in this particular letter. He was talking about the letting of land by rent in a specific case, not the French Revolution itself.
Yeah.
Because he was very strongly opposed to that for reasons, frankly, because he said that it went against the tradition and the inherited lessons from the past. So he felt it was unacceptable to take down a government unless you could be sure that you could replace it with something, and what you were going to replace it with would work. So
Yeah. Yeah. It's a fascinating story there. Hey, thanks for that tidbit. That excerpt is available thanks to the Pepperdine School of Public Policy in Malibu, California. Great appreciation for those who make efforts to provide access to historical documents for the public. The phrase continued to be in use, often in political or social commentary. Here's an example from the Norfolk Gazette and Public Ledger from April 29th, 1805, out of Norfolk, Virginia. Quote, "Does it violate your rights to say we have some rights also? Is it political intolerance in us to claim a proportionate share? What the deuce? Can you not harmonize in society unless you have everything in your own hands? Fie, for shame. Leave it to me, and I will cut up the carcass and make a fair division of it." Look, readers, at the paper to which we allude, and there you will find all this written. He had, like Varro, been too rash and incurred the risk of defeat. He now resolved to play Fabius and temporize. I only mean to take a proportionate share, says he, but with a silent mental reservation to make it the lion's share. End quote.
Interesting.
Yeah. So this time, the statement is that the person claims to only take an appropriate share, but in reality, it was going to take more than they deserved in time whenever they could find the right moment to do so.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, love that they said what the deuce.
Yeah.
Like I didn't.
I did not know that in 1805 anyone said what the deuce, but all right.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Fantastic. Henry Taylor's 1836 work titled The Statesman is a political treatise. He discusses the duties and characters of a statesman and describes the ideal qualities of someone in public service. Quote, again, in the view of those duties to which I would point, let this be included, that the department of the highest authority in the state should always be ready to take the lion's share of responsibility and labor, where the importance of the affair invites it. End quote. So in Taylor's work, the lion's share is used merely to indicate the amount of responsibility and work. An individual taking this particular lion's share would be seen in a positive light.
Yes, because they're doing all the work for everybody else.
Right. Ah,
I love it. Yeah, it's a great job. You keep doing all the work for the rest of us.
well, yeah. It's the mark of a good statesman, apparently. The next item comes from the Tri-Weekly Journal out of Evansville, Iowa, dated June 15th, 1847. Quote, some of Mr. Owen's friends are disposed to quarrel with us for charging him with neglecting his district. They say he has done wonders for the district, that heretofore, when officers were to be selected, our claims were entirely overlooked by the general government. But Mr. Owen has been so indefatigable in his exertions that at last he has succeeded in dividing the spoils with other sections, and they tell us he has secured the lion's share. Well, well, we acknowledge the corn. He has secured the lion's share, sure enough, and the people are benefited, we suppose. End quote.
We acknowledge the corn.
Yeah,
we acknowledge the corn.
the corn.
We've talked about that in our Civil War episode. Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed that one was in there. From the publication Punch, or the London Charivari, June 22nd, 1872, out of London, England. This is a comedic publication, and our excerpt is from a piece titled Fine Arts. Quote, yet, after all, the arts which most affect society are assuredly not those which occupied the life study of Raphael and Rembrandt. Brag of our art culture as vainly as we may, society cares far less to study the fine art of Rubens or Reynolds than to heed the culture of such fine arts as the following. The art of finding a rich friend to make a tour with you in autumn, and of leaving him to bear the lion's share of the expenses. End quote. So there's like a whole list of different social skills to take advantage of others that were listed in this article. And we're going to take a look at a few of those fine arts in our behind-the-scenes video. And the behind-the-scenes video for each episode is available on our Patreon every Friday at patreon.com/bunnytrailspod. The phrase was used in a joke in the San Antonio Daily Light, July 14th, 1894, out of San Antonio, Texas. Quote, Mother, Walter, see that you give Beatrice the lion's share of that banana. Walter, yes, Mama. Beatrice, Mama, Walter hasn't given me any. Walter, well, that's all right. Lions don't eat bananas. End quote.
Nice.
Cute. Our next item comes from the Evening Public Ledger, July 30th, 1917, Night Extra edition out of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. In the pictorial section, which is labeled as the Round the Town Updates and Gossip section, essentially old-fashioned Facebook, one spread is filled with photos and short little snippets featuring who's who in the area and what their recent activities have been. The tagline at the top of the page reads, quote, Philadelphia contributes a lion's share of the interesting news of the day, end quote. I didn't include any of the actual news that was interesting because I didn't actually find it that interesting. It's just random people about town, kind of thing. The phrase is seen in a lot of ad spaces. One that stood out to me was a comic strip ad titled "Literary Lion Roars at Big Car Costs." This was published in the May 22nd, 1960 edition of the Evening Star out of Washington, D.C. Quote, "Rambler Deep Dip Rust Proofing. And you get the lion's share of resale value with Rambler. It is officially highest," he roared. "Single unit construction and deep dip rust proofing save you hundreds of dollars in depreciation." End quote.
Nice.
All right, we have several modern uses to cover, and we'll get to those right after we say thank you to our sponsors.
This episode is sponsored by our amazing patrons on Patreon. And the cool thing about Patreon is it is 100% free to join the Bunny Trails community. We have new things every weekday on the feeds. On Mondays, we have a conversation about what movies, shows, books, podcasts, and whatever else everyone is enjoying. Tuesdays see early access to the week's podcast. Wednesdays have all the links, books, songs, and other content mentioned in the week's episode. Thursday has patrons-only polls. And Fridays are our lightly edited, behind-the-scenes video featuring all the cut content, goofs, and bonus facts you could imagine.
We've got some other pretty cool stuff too, like original digital artwork once a month made by me and direct access to talk with us. No algorithms getting in the way of what we see or don't see. Plus, you can get awesome name recognition like Pat Rowe does every episode. And our top spot is currently occupied by the amazing Mary Halsig Lopez. You can join the Bunny Trails community for free at Bunny Trails Pod on Patreon.
That's patreon.com/bunnytrailspod.
First up in our modern uses is a music group. Founded in Sundsvall, Sweden in 1987 by guitarist Lars Krist and keyboardist Kay Backlund, Lion's Share immediately began perfecting their band of classy commercial hard rock through intensive rehearsals and live performances, eventually winning the first prize at a national band competition the following year. Notably, they released an album in 2007 with guest musicians from bands like Chimera, Kiss, and Megadeth. The band was invited to perform at Man O' War's Festival in Germany, the Magic Circle. The group has been through twists and turns and as many cast changes as any good rock band. They've released music as recently as 2018. The Lion's Share is a 2012 picture book by author and illustrator Matthew McElligott. Here's a synopsis. Quote, "When Aunt receives a special invitation to dine with Lion, she is ready to be on her best behavior. During dessert, the other guests do not mind their manners, and by the time the dessert cake reaches Aunt, barely a crumb is left for her to share with the king. Baking a cake seems like the perfect way to make it up to him, until the other guests turn their kind gesture into a contest. Exactly how many cakes are fit for a king?" End quote.
I think we already addressed this, like not even a whole pumpkin pie.
Not even a whole pumpkin pie.
Unless you bring them like every day. Actually, I
Mhm.
don't know how long my body could handle eating pumpkin pie, frankly. One slice a day for a couple of days, maybe 2-3 days, probably tops.
It's like a lot of
It's
sugar.
just so much
and
sugar.
Stuff.
It is
Yeah.
so much sugar.
Lion's Share is a 2019 oil on canvas painting by artist Anne Zamo of France. It's a still life painting of a little white mouse on a big piece of cheese Roquefort, and it's really cute. The mouse is cute.
He is. He looks like one of those little lab rats because he's a little white mouse, you know, the ones you always see in the cartoons depicting those. But yeah, I don't know what kind of cheese this is. So I don't.
Roquefort.
No, I know that you said that. I don't know what that is.
Oh, okay.
I'm an American, so I know what Colby Jack and cheddar and mozzarella and Parmesan and Kraft. Kraft singles. I know what Velveeta is. It's not even really cheese.
Wouldn't like this kind of cheese because it's like a blue cheese kind of.
I do not like blue cheese. You are correct.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So yeah,
We even have a cheesemonger in town. I should just go and I'd be like, tell me everything you know about cheese in the next 10 minutes. I'll give you $1 if you tell me everything you know about cheese.
I can't. Please tell me when you do that so I can be there to see the reaction. Another art piece found on Saatchi Art is also a 2019 work titled The Lion's Share. This is an acrylic on canvas painting by Kenneth Abraham of the United States. And this one is is not a realist painting. It is a little bit more impressionist. It's kind of fun. Here are his comments about the piece. Quote, "Feline world, keep 'em coming. Infernal portraits of cats in acrylic on canvas. I love Gauguin and Matisse. My cat Ian also inspired this painting. My viewers are modern, ironic admirers of authentic painting. I live in the world of AI, the digital world, and I like to do everything handmade." End quote. Got a lot of bold colors, and it depicts there's a cat at a table, basically, with a fish in front of him. So, very fun. Remastered, The Lion's Share is a show that premiered on Netflix in 2019. Quote, "After discovering the family of Solomon Linda, the writer of The Lion Sleeps Tonight, a reporter tries to help them fight for fair compensation." End quote. So this tells the story about the original writer of the song that was in the Lion King movie. There's also a related novel that discusses topics such as ethnomusicology and copyright law in the context of post-apartheid South Africa, as well as the racial and social aspects of the issue. The book is titled Lion's Share, Remaking South African Copyright by Veit Earlman. This was published in 2022. The Lion's Share Fund works towards safeguarding animal welfare and creating a world where biodiversity flourishes. The overview from their website states, quote, "A multi-partner platform for private sector corporations, philanthropists, foundations, and global local non-governmental organizations, the Lion's Share Fund tackles current wildlife conservation and animal welfare crises by redirecting advertising funds to augment biodiversity and sustainable animal care practices." End quote. Good, doing some good works there. University of Arkansas, Fort Smith, whose mascot is, you guessed it, a
wolf.
lion. Oh, jeez. Thanks.
Dang it.
Nice try. You're so close.
Yeah.
They support their students with the following program. Quote, "Lion's Share connects UAFS students to scholarships made possible by the generous support of private donors. This simple online application gives students another resource to help pay for college." End quote.
Well, in the United States, they're going to need
They definitely need a lion's share of funding for college.
many resources
Yeah,
to pay for college.
definitely. The Lion's Share is a restaurant in San Diego, California. Here's a little from their website. Quote, "Our vision is quite simple. It is our desire to offer food and cocktails with only the best ingredients, prepared meticulously for your enjoyment. We will skip the pretense often associated with an establishment of this nature and instead offer you our undivided attention, knowledge, and appreciation. Please do not hesitate to ask any questions or make suggestions. It is our assurance that you will not meet a more accommodating staff. So sit back, dismiss the worries of your day, and enjoy your share." End quote. So
That's clever.
Yeah, like a little turn of phrase at the end there. Enjoy your share, aka the lion's share.
It's very good.
The lion's share is a great phrase. It's definitely idiomatic in that it doesn't completely make sense if it's taken literally. However, I do think it lends itself to being understood in context, and it offers a lot of versatility. Personally, though, whether it's physical labor or dessert, it might be best to exercise moderation. I think I'll go ahead and leave the lion's share for the group. That's about all we have for today. If you have any thoughts on the show or pop culture references we should have included, reach out to us on Patreon, patreon.com/bunnytrailspod, or comment on our website, bunnytrailspod.com.
It is poll time. Recently, we asked our patrons, if you could have dinner with any person, living or dead, who would it be? Now, the winner was world leaders, which included political, religious, and other leaders. And in second place was a family member, which is very sweet.
Picking just one in this one is another of those things that gives choose your favorite child vibes for me. It feels impossible. But I went with my gut, and I'd have dinner with my Granny D. She was a remarkable woman, and I'd love to talk to her now that I'm a little older and a little wiser. Jan shared, quote, I'm going with Benjamin Franklin. A lot of history there, plenty of writings by and about him. It would be interesting to get the real feel of who he was, what inventions he was working on, and his trips around Europe in the 1700s, end quote. And Heather adds, quote, my first thought was Abraham Lincoln, but when I really consider it, I'd love to share a meal with my grandfather, Franklin, who passed before I was born. I've heard so many stories of him, it would be great to actually meet and talk to him, end quote.
My top three have long been set. I probably made this decision in my mid-20s. This is what I was going with. Harry S. Truman was my first choice. He made the final. He was president when they made the final decision to drop the atomic bomb on Japan. And as a longtime crisis manager, I'd love to get a feel for what kinds of discussions had to happen to make that what was obviously a very difficult decision. I want to hear the arguments he heard for and against, and the things that weighed on his mind as he made that decision. It's kind of the ultimate. That you get those things like that, and JFK during the Cuban Missile Crisis, and some of those things that literally the fate of parts of the world are hanging in the balance of your decisions here. I just love to be able to talk to somebody like that, and Harry S. Truman is a good representation of that. My runners up would include Benjamin Franklin, as Jan said, and then also Jesus of Nazareth. However, as we get older and more of my friends and loved ones are gone from this life, I have to say I have many people that I would love to have dinner with one more time. We will close out with JGP's thoughts. Quote, assuming language wasn't an issue, my choice would be Xingji, the woman who commanded the 40,000 and 60,000 pirates and 400 ships and basically controlled the South China Sea in the early 1800s before she negotiated a pardon that included a noble title and a lot of money and then retired. Everything I've read about her life sounds fascinating, end quote.
These are such amazing choices. I want to just sit and listen to all of these dinner conversations. Just be the fly on the wall, you know?
Well, as a reminder, our silly polls mean absolutely nothing and are not scientifically valid. And patrons of all levels, including our free tiers, can take part. Head over to patreon.com/bunnytrailspod to take this week's poll. Thanks for joining us. We will talk to you again next week. Until then, remember, words belong to their users.